I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. All the ways to contact us right there on your screen. You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or you can call and leave a message, 503-226-5090. That's our phone number. We'd love to hear what you have to say. We're continuing The Story at Home edition because I got a positive return on my PCR test. That means I do have COVID. Couple lessons from that. Number one, if you feel like you have a cold and you have an at-home test, you should take it. And if it tells you you're positive, you should believe it. And if you decide to go get a PCR test like I did, don't expect to get it back anytime soon. They told me they're slammed, and so what used to be 1 day is now 2 or 3 days before you get your results. I'm feeling good though, and I should be back in the office by Monday. But enough about that. Abortion is still our big story. Let's go to Evan Watson now, who has a look at abortion numbers in Oregon.
We've been talking about Roe v. Wade this week, with the U.S. Supreme Court expected to overturn the ruling protecting abortion rights across the country. A leaked draft opinion shows the conservative majority could vote to let each state decide whether to restrict or ban abortion. But what do you know about the data behind abortions in Oregon? How many abortions are provided in our area each year? How many people seeking abortions are from out of state? And how has this changed over time? The Oregon Health Authority tracks and reports induced abortions performed in the state. An induced abortion is an intentional medical procedure that's done to end a pregnancy, as opposed to a spontaneous abortion or miscarriage. From 2018 to this year, residents in the Tri-County area of Multnomah, Washington, and Clackamas counties made up about half of all induced abortions in Oregon, per OHA. The number of abortions carried out in Oregon in 2020 and 2021 were the lowest of any years the health authority has tracked. Both nationally and in Oregon, the abortion rate has been declining for decades. In the 90s and early 2000s, about 14,000 induced abortions were reported in Oregon each year. Now the annual number is less than half of that. Preliminary data from 2021 shows about 6,500 abortions were carried out last year. As Oregon is one of the few states with no legal restrictions on abortion, people from other states can travel here for more options and consultations. Over the last 5 years, OHA data shows about 9 to 10% of people getting abortions in Oregon are from out of state. If the Roe v. Wade ruling is overturned, some analysts say demand for abortion and health services in Oregon could increase, as other states, such as Idaho, could restrict legal access. Planned Parenthood is expected to open a clinic on the Oregon-Idaho border in Ontario soon, after lobbying Oregon lawmakers for $15 million in funding. The organization has leased a clinic, but it's not operating yet. It's also good to know who is most likely to get an abortion. A New York Times analysis of CDC data found the typical patient is a single woman in her late 20s. 6 in 10 people who have an abortion are already mothers, and nearly half are low-income women. About 92% of all abortions occur in the first 13 weeks of pregnancy, with a large majority in the first trimester.
Let's talk about homelessness for a moment. We've long suspected that during the pandemic, the homeless problem got a lot worse on the streets of the greater Portland area, and now we know that's true. The first report that counts the number of homeless people, the first one since 2019, is now out. Kyla Boshi has a look at what it says about the areas around Portland.
The point-in-time count is required by the federal government every other year. The survey counts the number of people experiencing homelessness in each community, and certainly no surprise, the Portland area has seen a significant jump in the numbers. The survey conducted in January found there are more than 5,000 people experiencing homelessness in Multnomah County alone. That's an increase of nearly 1,000 people from 2019, the last time the count was taken. It was delayed 1 year because of COVID. Many of the homeless, about 3,000, were what we called unsheltered. In other words, roughly 70% were living in tents, sleeping bags, or in their cars. The rest spent the night in emergency shelters or transitional housing. Now, I spoke with the interim director of the Joint Office of Homeless Services today. She cautioned those numbers are probably an undercount. That's because it's tough to get an accurate head count since not everyone living outdoors can be located, and they didn't include people sleeping on someone's couch. Important to note, many shelters had to decrease the number of people they could accommodate during the pandemic. Also, City Commissioner Dan Ryan came out today with a statement blasting Multnomah County's point-in-time count methodology. He complained that Multnomah County makes things too difficult by adding in-depth interviews. He thinks there should be real-time data on homelessness, showing where each person is living and what help, if any, they're getting. Full details from the point-in-time count will be released this summer. This was just an overview, providing a glimpse of the data.
The problems with homelessness are not limited to the greater Portland area. There are issues all over the state of Oregon. And whoever becomes governor in the fall is going to have their hands full with just that one issue. How are you going to solve it? How are you going to deal with it? Those are tough questions to answer right now. So we took those to the leading Republican candidates for governor. We had a debate Tuesday. Here's what they had to say.
And in this state, we're like #1 in addiction and almost number 50 in actual services that people have access to. And if you talk to police officers, this is taking up about 15 to 30% of their time. They're trying to work with people that are in crisis on our streets, and there's really only two options. They can take them to the emergency room or they can take them to jail. So we need infrastructure. And so the plan that I have is based after the elderly care model. It's 3 levels of care. It's community-based. First level is where you would have, let's say, your memory care patients. Then you would have assisted living and independent living. And we need to start with our people that are struggling with addiction and mental health that are unsheltered and start them with the most secure level of care and get them healthy and stabilized. And then we got to make it so that we're not seeing people camping on our streets, and we have to say no to that.
This has been an abysmal failure, our homeless policy, and our career politicians should be ashamed. So I bring some unique experience and expertise. I understand this at a gut level and at an intellectual level because I'm 40 years in recovery. When I stopped drinking at 28, I was a chronic round-the-clock alcoholic. I understand at this very deep level, what we are doing is backwards. We do not have a homeless problem. We primarily have a substance abuse problem on our streets. And we are enabling these people to commit slow suicide. This is not compassionate. It is absolutely inhumane. I would set up a database. I would then go to low barrier homeless shelters that would push these people off the street and at least get a roof over their head, then reallocate all this housing money back to treatment. We need to turn the housing first model on its head. I'll tell you what, we have created a homeless industrial complex, and I will put an end to it.
We have a proposal to house an alternative location under that 9th Circuit ruling on Port of Portland property. We can have property there that we house folks. And then we have our own police security firm as Port of Portland. As governor, we appoint the next commissioner. We can get security beefed up there. And when those folks break the rules in the law, they go to jail. Sam Adams actually had a plan that was very similar to ours, copying our plan. Unfortunately, what we saw is they couldn't muster the local, support to be able to put that into place. That's exactly why it needs to be done at the state level. That's why we need to use state resources to do it. That's why we need to use Port of Portland property, and we need to enforce our rules. So if the city of Portland's not willing to stand up as our next governor, we certainly will. It's a big reason why we're looking to triple the size of the state police.
No, I would say if they were breaking, I would say if they're breaking the law after having access to a shelter and voluntary programs to help themselves and then insisted on going back on the streets and living there or in the parks, in my mind, they're breaking the law and there has to be a penalty. I think an appropriate penalty is to move them off the streets and into some form of a locked shelter incarceration. I would do that. It's not breaking the law to be poor or mentally ill or drug addicted. It's against the law to live on the streets when you have an alternative that is there to serve you.
So if they don't take you up on the alternative to go to a shelter, you think that it's okay to put them in jail?
For a period of time, I think that is correct.
You can watch the entire debate on KGW's YouTube page, along with our debate with the Democratic frontrunners who have their own homeless plans. In Portland's Old Town District, which continues to struggle with crime and violence and addiction and homeless issues, the BLANCHET house is shining a bright light. They've opened their doors to indoor dining again, something that they couldn't do during the pandemic, and now they're on the verge of launching a new program that some think is going to make a big difference in that area. The BLANCHET House is a nonprofit social services organization founded 70 years ago. Its main building stands at 310 Northwest Gleason in Portland. The group serves 3 meals a day, 6 days a week to anyone who's hungry, no questions asked. That means they serve many who live in tents across the street from the building and anyone else. It totals about 1,000 meals a day. But over the course of the pandemic, those meals were served outside until now.
They have been living and existing in truly horrible, horrid terrifying and inhumane conditions since the shutdown in March of 2020. And as good as our to-go service has been, and we're quite proud of it, it's still eating on the street, eating on a sidewalk, sitting in a gutter, having a meal.
Scott Kerman is executive director of the BLANCHET House. He's seen the raw side of Old Town.
The mental health crisis in Old Town is extreme. I don't even think of this as a homeless problem. Right now, I think of it as a mental health crisis. And it's an addiction crisis because people often will self-medicate as a way of dealing with their trauma and their PTSD and other mental illnesses that they're suffering from.
While he can't fix that, he has come up with a plan to help. He sold the county on setting aside more than $1 million to hire 6 peer support specialists who will be shared by the BLANCHET House, Rosehaven, William Temple House, and Maybell Center for the Community.
And that's going to create a continuity of care that just hasn't existed before. These teams are going to get to know our clients from agency to agency because we serve a lot of the same folks down here. They'll eat a meal at BLANCHET House and then they'll move to another agency in Old Town for other services. And I think it's just going to really help us create relationships with the people that we're serving that's going to lead to better outcomes.
The specialists will be people who are in recovery and have been homeless or lived with addiction or mental health issues. They understand what people are going through. BLANCHET already has 2 specialists of its own.
During our lunch service today, a woman came in, sat down at a table and just put her head down. And she was fairly non-responsive. She wasn't passed out, but she was pretty non-responsive. We didn't know if she was just dope sick or what was going on. But we had 2 peer support specialists just checking in with her, making sure she was okay. We talked about whether we had to call 911. We decided we didn't have to at that time.
Eventually, he said that woman ate some food and moved on. The good news is that Kerman has a plan. The bad news is because of bureaucracy, it's taking forever. He came up with the idea more than a year ago. Currently, just 1 of the 6 is hired.
And sometimes the bureaucracy can get in the way. And, I'm thankful that we're moving forward now. We're going to have these peer teams available to us. But I needed these teams, 6 months ago. And a lot can happen in a little bit of time. We've had a lot of violence in Old Town. We've had 2 meal guests violently murdered in Old Town in the last 2 months. And so I just would say that when we have, ideas that really make sense, wherever they come from, let's see what we can do to cut through some of the red tape and get these services to the people who need them.
Kerman says he does not know when all the people will be hired that will allow them to launch this program. A different agency is handling that hiring. They're working hard, but so far, they've only been able to hire 1 out of the 6 people they're looking for. School's pretty much back to normal for kids these days, but doctors say students are still suffering from mental health issues that stem from the pandemic.
They were stunted by not having 2 years to develop their persona outside of their family. And a lot of them are having anxiety about going back into school, being around their peers.
When the story continues. Welcome back. Keep on sending your questions and comments to our email address, thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. We've talked a lot about students having mental health challenges and behavioral issues, and those 2 have really gotten worse during the pandemic. Linda sent us this email saying, I listened to all the reports of violent behavior in schools, and somehow the focus is always on what teachers and educators can do about it. What about the parents? That's a good question. Christine Pidewanich talked with a pediatrician about what parents can do to help their kids.
The pediatrician I spoke to wants to remind parents that they have a role to play when it comes to helping their children through mental health challenges. Doctors and educators know firsthand that without help and support, these kids that are experiencing challenges may act out in the classroom or just be anxious, which affects their learning at school.
I'm seeing it every day that I live at in clinic. Kids who in the past may not have had struggles with school or with moods are suddenly having issues.
Dr. Lisa Denike is the regional chief of pediatrics for Kaiser Permanente Northwest. She says many children had anxiety or feelings of sadness before COVID, but the pandemic caused an increase.
We've seen a huge uptick in mood disorders with kids.
She knows for many kids, the return to full-time in-person learning was difficult after being home for 2 years. That is illustrated in a Blue Shield of California survey. When students returned to school, only 31% felt emotionally prepared to socialize in person. 20% felt they'd succeed in school, and 28% felt they'd be able to focus on learning. Then add in overall uncertainty at school, as well as some kids acting out.
I had a child just the other day very concerned for her own safety in a classroom, and she was grade school aged.
Younger kids she's seen have told her they were anxious about not wearing a mask. They may have lost a family member to COVID or are worried about one getting sick.
The older kids, the adolescents, they were stunted by not having 2 years to develop their persona outside of their family. And a lot of them are having anxiety about going back into school, being around their peers.
But we know the trend in students acting out started before the pandemic. Denike says the world has changed a lot for kids in the last 5 to 10 years.
Most kids have the internet in their pocket now. Most parents are not monitoring what their kids are being exposed to.
And parents have the internet at their fingertips too.
I also think that activity takes away from our true connectedness with our children.
Denike advises parents to make a conscious decision to make time for their kids and put the devices away.
I think one of the most impactful things we can do for our children is to schedule regular one-on-one time with each of our kids.
And she says that one-on-one time can just be a couple of times a week, maybe 5 to 10 minutes at a time, where both parents and kids set aside their devices and really try to connect with one another. Christine Pitawanich, KGW News.
Still ahead, the story of one man fighting to lift the ban on gay and bisexual men donating blood, and he's doing it to honor his late husband.
I know it would make him happy. And I think he'd probably start off by being second in line to donate blood. I would be first.
When the story continues. All this week, we brought you a series of reports explaining how gay and bisexual men have not been able to contribute blood. It's something that dates back to the AIDS scare in the 1980s. Some doctors are now pushing to change that. Kenneth sent us an email saying, "This story really speaks to me because I am a 30-year-old gay man, and I remember the first time I ever heard that gay men were not allowed to donate blood. It was when I was in high school at the blood drive trying to give blood myself. I wasn't yet out of the closet, but felt like I should answer honestly because of the serious nature and was instantly turned away, leading to more bullying based on the speculation of why. It is a time I will never forget. It's time to update the laws." Thank you for sharing your story with us, Kenneth. Let's now get to the third part of our special series from our sister station in Atlanta.
I actually had a journal entry from January 4th of 1999. I've not spent much time talking about Peter. My, has he changed. He is so much the image of the ideal man. He basically said, would you be interested in spending your life with me? And my immediate response was I laughed. And I said, why would we want to ruin a perfectly good friendship? He is strong, determined, capable, beautiful, loving, and multifaceted. It was New Year's Eve, and that was our magic moment. That I turned to him and I said, you know what? I do think we need to give this a try. The thoughts I felt about living my life with him have become a reality. I hope this works. It feels so right. He worked with the HIV testing program for what was then known as Mercy Mobile. I went on to run an HIV advocacy organization called AIDS Survival Project. These were the roles that we played. I was the advocate, he was the medical educator. when it really stopped making sense was when I got into a committed relationship with the man who would eventually become my husband. And that's when that sense of loss, and frankly that sense of anger, started to rise from time to time.
In my own practice, I have many, many gay couples who are men whose blood I would take in a heartbeat. They are in long-term relationships. They're monogamous. I think the problem is we haven't followed the science. We would really be able to meet the needs of the population whose lives depend on having blood transfusions if we open up a little bit more.
One morning in August, when he had been ill for several days, I'd reached out to his primary care physician. The primary care doctor had set him up to get some more medical tests the next week, and went to wake him up one morning, and he just said he couldn't feel his legs, and then he fell back and collapsed in my arms, and that's when he died. In bed that morning in my arms.
What do you do when you lose the person that you love the most?
I grew up with the AIDS epidemic, so grief is nothing new to me, but the grief of losing a spouse was something that is different. It's a different type of grief. I know it would make him happy. And I think he'd probably start off by being second in line to donate blood. I would be first. While it's sad and I miss him every day, I had one of the great love stories, and I will be able to carry that forever with me.
Keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. When we come back, how you can help make an impact on our community. For this week's Hey Help campaign, we're asking you to donate to Cascadia Behavioral Health Care. They provide mental and behavioral care, addiction treatment services, and primary care to vulnerable communities in Portland. They also help connect people with housing. If you want to donate, just hold your phone's camera up to the QR code right there on your screen, or you can go to kgw.com/heyhelp. This is a micro donation drive, so feel free to give any amount, no matter how big or how small. Well, that's the end of our program. Thanks so much for being here and for watching our show. But remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow night.